So I would like to welcome everyone. On behalf of the National Transit Institute, I would like to thank everyone for participating in the NTD Safety and Security Rail Mode Reporting webinar. The National Transit Institute develops, promotes, and delivers training and education programs for the public transit industry in the United States. We are pleased to have again today Ann Singleton, Tim Edwards, and James Overbeek as our presenters. Ann Singleton is a Senior Safety and Security Analyst for the NTD program since 2009. Ann has been involved with several FTA initiatives such as the State Safety Oversight Program, the Commuter Rail Safety Study, and the Transit Bus Safety and Security Program in a variety of roles. Prior to Ann's work with FTA, she was a software instructor and database developer. Tim Edwards is a data analyst having a rough afternoon, for the Safety and Security module of the National Transit Database. He has been with NTD since December 2014. Tim is a graduate of the University of Virginia, where he received a Bachelor's of Science degree in Architecture and spent 2 years as a transit operator for the University of Transit Service. University of Transit. I apologize. My mouth is just not functioning. James Overbeek is a Safety and Security Analyst for the National Transit Database. He has been with NTD since September 2015. James graduated from Randolph-Macon College with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Business and Economics. Today's webinar consists of Ann, Tim, and James presenting their material, followed by question and answer sessions throughout. You can participate in the discussion using the chat box that is in the lower left corner of your screen. Since there were 3 presenters, the 2 who are not speaking will probably be able to answer questions, but if any are missed, I will be keeping track of them and I can ask them and moderate them when we stop for questions. If you haven't already printed out a copy of the presentation that should have been emailed to you, you can click on the handout document in the upper left-hand corner of your screen where it says Handouts, or you can copy and paste the link in the notes box, which is right under the Handouts box. You can also email Andrea Lambert at andrealam@nti.rutgers.edu, and she will help you out. I will now turn the presentation over to Ann.
Thank you, Lori. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. The goal of today's session is to familiarize NTD reporters with the safety and security reporting requirements and the individual reporting forms. We hope that the knowledge you gain today will make your job easier, and we sincerely appreciate your commitment to safety and security reporting. For those of you that also report for purchase transportation providers, please feel free to share this presentation with them so that they are aware of what you are required to report to NTD. Today we'll show you how to access the NTD system and navigate through the menus and forms. We will discuss how setup is achieved. We'll review the Safety and Security CEO Certification form, the S&S-20, and the S&S-30 Security Configuration forms. We will also review 2018 reporting clarifications and the form change, there's one form change, and reporting on the S&S-50 non-major summary forms and major event reporting. As mentioned, Tim, James, and I are your instructors for today. Joe Eldridge, the NTD Project Manager, and Maggie Schilling, the NTD Program Manager, will not be joining us today. Our contact data is also provided, it's provided here, of course, as you see, but it's also provided at the end of the presentation. So if you'd like to jot that down, please feel free to. If you're not sure who your NTD analyst is, you can certainly contact any of us and we'll direct you to that individual. First, we'll have a brief overview of the NTD program, then we'll discuss the website and show you how to navigate. In 1974, Congress established the National Transit Database Program as a means to collect information and statistics on transit systems in the United States. The first data was collected in 1979 with paper reports. Since then, the NTD has evolved into the nation's primary source of information and statistics on transit systems. All modes of transportation are included in NTD data collection. Agencies that are recipients or beneficiaries of Urbanized Area Formula Funds, 5307 and 5311, are required to report data with some exceptions. Both public and private providers are encouraged to voluntarily report, as this will increase the federal allocation to that urbanized area. All reporters designated as full reporters are required to report monthly safety and security events meeting a threshold. Agencies designated as small systems or rural or tribal reporters report safety and security data on an annual basis. Agencies who have requested a reporting waiver due to significant natural disaster are not required to report for the period of the waiver. The data reported to NTD is used to provide industry performance reports to Congress and other federal agencies and departments, and is used to factor federal funding allocations for the UZA, which was over $8 billion last year. The data is also used to direct, support, and improve other FTA program initiatives, such as the State Safety Oversight Program. The data is also used to generate various analyses of trends in safety and transit safety and security. The safety and security data reported to NTD is published monthly. This data is viewed by federal, state agencies, transit systems, media, or any other interested parties. Published data can be found on the NTD website under the NTD Data link. There are two products, the Safety and Security Time Series data and the Safety and Security Major Only Time Series. Accessing NTD. Your username is your email address entered in all lowercase letters. The agency's user manager establishes a person's user role in the system. The user manager is also the point of contact if you need to have your user role changed. There are 6 access levels for reporting in NTD. The CEO, CEO delegate, and NTD contacts have the highest level of access and full functionality to include NTD annual forms, monthly ridership, and safety and security data forms. The main difference between the two CEO accesses and the NTD contact is that CEOs and delegates can submit the agency's certification forms. NTD editors, shown only as editor in the system, are next, and they can edit annual forms and can submit monthly ridership and safety and security forms. The safety contact can create, edit, save, and submit safety and security forms. Safety editors can create, edit, and save NTD reports, but they cannot submit data and they cannot delete forms. Safety viewers can only view data and have no editing rights. None of the safety contacts can access or change annual or monthly ridership data. One person must be uniquely identified in only one role. The designated contacts are responsible for reporting data accurately and responding to questions about submitted data. The designated safety contact and the NTD contact will receive any automated late notices and monthly reminders generated from the system. The last modified user, which you'll see a little bit later when we show you one of the screens, is the person that will receive reports or forms that we return for questions or changes. Users can change the password as often as they like, but the system requires a new password every 60 days. Passwords must be at least 12 to 20 characters and comprised of at least one uppercase letter, one lowercase letter, one number, and/or a special character, any 3 out of the 4. If a user ID has not been used for 60 days, the system will lock that ID. If you get locked out, click on the Reset Password link located beneath where you enter your login. If you forget your password and you're not locked out, instead of seeing a reset option, you'll see a Forgot Password link instead. On March 18, 2016, FTA launched a new website which contains the link to NTD data reporting. This is a snapshot of the NTD page on the FTA website. Please notice the link to the NTD reporting tool. Also, on the left-hand side in the banner, you'll notice there are several links, which we're going to review next. The NTD homepage contains a variety of links and resources. The About NTD section contains an overview of the NTD program, contains contact information and help desk contact information. The NTD Data section provides access to historical and current annual data, monthly ridership data, and safety and security data. In addition to the safety and security time series files we just mentioned, these time series files contain statistical information on reported NTD events over the course of many years. This is only safety and security data for these two. These resources are often used for peer comparison. Under reference materials, you'll find the NTD glossary, the policy manuals, internet reporting guide, quick reference guides, information on training and conferences, presentations, webinars, etc., as well as an explanation of all of the forms used in NTD reporting. When you click on the Report Tool link, the first screen that appears is depicted here on the left-hand side. And once you click on the disclaimer that you agree, you'll see the next screen presented where you enter in your email address and password. You'll also see down here you have the Forgot Password link. And again, if you get locked out, you'll see a Reset Password link. Please note, just mention here, if you do click on Reset Password, the system is going to send you an email almost immediately. Sometimes takes a minute or two, but you'll get an email with a link to reset your password. So you'll want to look for that email. It might go to your spam, so you may want to check there if you don't see it within a few moments. The link is only good for 15 minutes, so if you don't want to say reset password and then walk away. You want to be prepared to follow through with the email. When you click on the reporting tool link, the first scroll, excuse me, I'll take that back. When you log in, this is the snapshot that you'll see when you first come into the system. So you'll notice that up across the top, there's a blue banner with menu options. We're going to go over those menu options now. So that default screen that you just saw is the home screen, and it's actually called the News menu page. This is where you'll find a variety of announcements and items of interest with regard to NTD reporting. The next menu item is the Tasks menu, which shows you how many tasks are in your queue. Tasks are things that you need to do. For example, one of the tasks you may have is to manage any pending or incomplete safety and security reports. You'll get a task here if you're starting a safety and security report, and if you leave that report anytime after the third screen without saving or submitting it, it'll become a task so that you can go back to that task and complete your report at a later time. The Records menu option is where you're going to go most of the time. This is where you would go to select the safety reporting package to report data. The Reports tab will display records that are available to you. One such record would be the Historical Lookup Report, which is used to view safety and security data that was reported in prior years. In 2017, we launched a new report called the Rate Compared to Industry Rate Report, which will allow you to compare your agency incident, injury, and fatality rates against the industry average. And finally, the Action menu is used to add new users in addition to other user actions. So that concludes the discussion of the menu option. As I mentioned, the Records tab is where the safety and security reporters will go most of the time. To report safety and security data, you would click on the NTD Safety Packages link. When you click on the NTD Safety Packages link, you'll have access to two reporting packages. Currently, when you go into this link, you see the 2016 and 2017 packages. On January 1, 2018, you will see one package for 2017 and one for 2018. The 2016 package will be closed. The safety packages give you access to all safety and security reporting forms. They are the S&S-20 CEO Certification Form, the S&S-30 Security Configuration Form to report security personnel, access to create and edit any S&S-40 major event reports, and the S&S-50 non-major summary report forms for each month thus far in the year. Safety and security analysts review each report submitted for accuracy. The analyst will contact the NTD reporter via phone or email for questions, late or incomplete reports, questionable data, missing reports based on event notifications that we may have, or for special analyses that we conduct during the year. The various forms and reports have deadlines. The S&S-50 non-major monthly summaries are due on the last day of each month for the previous month's data, except for commuter rail mode. For example, October report is due by November 30th. The NTD system sends automated email reminders on or about the 20th of each month. Now, this is not a late notice. It's just a reminder to report. The NTD system also sends automated late emails on the 1st and the 5th of each month. Please note that a report that has been created and saved but not submitted is considered late. When the late notices are sent, it's quite often for the analysts to receive calls or emails from reporters saying that they know they completed their report. And that may be true. You may have completed your report, but without clicking on the submit button, the system is going to generate that late notice to you. So if you get a late notice, please go in and check to make sure that all of your S&S-50s have submit dates. On the 15th of the month, if the data is still outstanding, FTA initiates delinquent reporter process and adds this to an agency's it adds it to a failure to report list that we maintain. At this point, the analyst will contact you to determine if there are any extenuating circumstances why the report cannot be submitted. Failure to report required data can have severe consequences. A failure to report can be submitted by an analyst to FTA if an agency does not submit their S&S-50s, the year-end CEO or the year-end CEO certification within 45 days. Delinquent reports or incomplete S&S-40s that do not comply with reporting requirements or failure to respond to validation inquiries can all qualify. So that completes an overview of the overview, if you will. So we'll take just a moment before we continue on for questions in the chat box. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions for right now, but we will have more breaks for questions. And of course, you can ask them at any time. So let's continue on and go through how we navigate and set up in the system. Safety and security packages are automatically generated at the beginning of the new calendar year or based on an agency's submitted annual kickoff report. Modes and types of services available in the safety module are determined by the agency's P20 profile form. If you see any changes to the modes or types of services than what you expect, especially at the beginning of the year, contact the person in your agency who submits the annual reporting data. If you do not know who that is, you can certainly contact the help desk or contact any of the safety and security analysts, and we'll be happy to find out who that person is. Please do not attempt to modify the P20 as any changes that you make to modes and types of services here will affect all aspects of NTD reporting. And by all aspects, I mean annual reports, monthly ridership reports, safety and security reports. So always please contact that annual reporter. To access your reporting form, as a reminder, you'd click on Records and then click on NTD Safety Packages in the year in which you want to report. When you complete these steps, the Safety Summary View displays, or landing page, as we also call it. You see a confirmation of the reporting year, your agency's ID number and name, your validation analyst's name and email address, and you see the year start and end dates here are always going to refer to calendar years, not your agency's fiscal years, since safety and security data is reported on a calendar year basis. Below that, you see a form name filter box, and then you see all of the forms that are available beneath that. So the form name filter box here allows you to filter out just specific report types that you would like to see, S&S-40s, 50s, 30s, etc. And then whatever you choose there, those forms will be displayed down here. You can also use your browser's Find feature by doing a Control F and then enter in the major event report number that you may be looking for. However, you do have to be on the page where that report is contained in order to find that report. Also, note each one of these column headings will allow you to sort the information by that type. So, for instance, if you submitted a report today and you need to go back in and edit it, clicking on the submitted date is going to sort it chronologically by date. Clicking on again will do a reverse sort. So that way the last reports you submitted will come up to the top of the list and be much easier to find. Remember that you cannot open any of the forms that you see below until you click on the button in the upper right-hand corner that says NTD Safety Forms. So right now you're really only able to view, and once you click on this button, you'll be able to edit, create, and so on. So when you click on that NTD Safety Forms button to access the dashboard, this is where you can create a new report, edit a report, or review existing reports. You can also use the filter box here, as I just mentioned on the previous screen, to restrict the view to the type of forms you want to see. Additionally, the same thing, you can sort any of the columns as we already outlined. When you find the report that you want, you would click on the adjacent checkbox that will be to the left of the file name, and once you've checked that box, then you can scroll up or down to click on the View Form button to open the report or form. When you're finished with the dashboard, you want to remember to click on Close, or the system will create a task for you to close the dashboard. This is a snapshot of the dashboard. It looks similar to the Safety Summary View, but note the check boxes. Well, actually, you can't even see them in this view, so I apologize for that. But you would have check boxes along this left-hand side here for your major event report forms. If it doesn't have a checkbox, you can just click on the blue link to open it up. Actually, yeah. So I was just thinking of something. All right, so that concludes navigating around and sorting and so forth. What we're going to do now is take a look at the S&S-20 CEO Certification forms. The S&S-20 CEO Certification form is the CEO's or his or her designee's attestation to the accuracy of the major and non-major safety and security data reported for the previous year. The form becomes available in January in the previous year's safety package when the new package launches. So in other words, January 2018, when the 2018 package launches, the 2017 CEO certification form will also launch in the 2017 package. The form automatically calculates data from submitted reports for the year. Unsubmitted data is not excluded in the form. The form is due by the end of February of the following year. And again, only the person logged in as CEO or CEO delegate can submit this form. Data reporters or the CEO should review their data to ensure it matches the data in the S&S-20. You can also check that all safety data reports are submitted, because again, anything unsubmitted will not appear calculated in that form, the S&S-20. You can also add, delete, or edit forms on the S&S-40 and 50 forms, and any changes that you make will automatically be recalculated on the S&S-20. It is a dynamic form. Agencies should use any in-house reports available to help identify and verify your data. The CEO would click on the Confirm box adjacent to each of the line items in the form. Once all of the boxes are checked for confirmation, then the CEO can submit the form. Once the form is submitted, it cannot be resubmitted, but again, note that anything that you add or delete will automatically be recalculated in the form. So this is a snapshot of the S&S-20. You'll see some data up here, and you may see some numbers up here, but please notice that this is just a test agency, so this in no way reflects any reported safety and security data of any actual agency. Okay, so again, let's take a quick break for calls, or excuse me, not calls, for chat box questions. And if you have none, I don't see any coming in right now. Okay, we'll have another break shortly. So I'm going to turn this over to James to take us through the S&S-30s. James?
Thanks, Ann. Hello, everyone. Now we're going to review the S&S-30 security configuration form. The S&S-30 security configuration form collects the number and type of security personnel employed or contracted by your agency. The S&S-30 form is completed once at the beginning of the calendar year, and you are not required to update this form during the year. All S&S-30s must be completed and submitted to enable reporting. If you cannot create or edit an S&S-40 or 50, it's because one or more S&S-30s is not submitted. This is a snapshot of the S&S-30 security configuration form. Notice you have a place to enter the primary number of security personnel and the total number of security personnel, which is the primary and secondary added together. Do not leave either of these boxes blank. Below is a list of 7 types of security personnel with 2 columns to identify the type as primary or secondary. The primary security personnel is the force that responds to incidents in or on transit-controlled property or are assigned to patrol agency property. For the use of local police non-contracted, use a count of 0. The secondary security force is the one or ones that occasionally respond or respond when primary force requires assistance. Again, for the use of local police non-contracted, use a count of 0. The number of personnel is reported in full-time equivalent hours. So one full-time equivalent equals one person working a 40-hour week or 2,080 hours per year. Prorate the number of personnel if the person works only part-time providing transit security, or they provide security for more than one mode. One S&S-30 is completed for each mode. Please be careful not to double count the personnel. Totaling line 2 from each mode's S&S-30 form should equal the total number of personnel for the agency. For example, the MBPT mode has the total number is 1.5, the LRDO mode, the total number is 3, and for DRDO mode, the total number is 0.5, this will mean that the total security force for the agency would be 5 full-time equivalent. If your security force covers multiple modes, you may use any reasonable method for determining full-time equivalency. That may be modal ridership or the number of employees covering a mode. If an agency contracts for security and pays a monthly fee based on services used, they should determine full-time equivalency based on the previous year's total hours worked. NTD allows for only one primary personnel type. If your agency has more than one type of security personnel it considers its primary, report the security force with the largest number of personnel as the primary and the smaller force as secondary. For further information on the S&S-20, please see the Safety and Security Policy Manual or the Safety and Security Internet Reporting Manual on the NTD website, or ask any of your analysts for assistance. This concludes the review of the S&S-20 form. We have a few changes for 2018 which are not threshold changes but clarifications. The definition of a reportable event has been expanded to include events occurring on transit infrastructure and events that involve transit-related maintenance activities that may not be on transit property. Historically, we have collected events in the rail yard and maintenance injuries, but this was not defined in the wording of a reportable event. The clarification also expands on the type of events that are not to be reported. Specifically, you see that this excludes events that occur on transit property where persons, vehicles, or objects come to rest on transit property after the event. We will provide some examples as we go through the presentation. The evacuation description has been clarified to ensure that self-evacuations are also to be due to a life safety situation or an evacuation to the right-of-way. This is a low-impact change. While previous guidance did not limit self-evacuations to a life safety situation or an evacuation to the right-of-way, we found there was only one instance where this was not the case. You may have already noticed that the suicide checkbox on the injury form has been changed to read attempted suicide. Now we'll take a look at the non-major S&S-50 reporting. The definition of a reportable event is a safety or security event occurring on transit right-of-way or infrastructure, at a transit revenue facility, at a maintenance facility or rail yard, during a transit-related maintenance activity, or involving a transit revenue vehicle. These safety events must meet the single injury only threshold and are related to falls, electric shock, etc. Multiple injury incidents are bumped up to a major report. The S&S-50 form also collects the number of non-major fires where there was not an evacuation, injuries, fatalities, or substantial damage, but that still require suppression. Some exclusions most applicable to the non-major events are events occurring at shelters not on transit-controlled property, unless boarding or lighting, and OSHA events occurring in administrative buildings. A complete list is included in the table shown earlier. The form is automatically generated for each mode type of service at the beginning of each month. This form is required to be completed even if there was a major event for the month, as they capture different event types, and even if there is no data to report for that particular month. To recap, for submitting other safety incidents, you are entering the number of incidents and the matching number of injured parties. Remember that injured means that they were transported away from the scene for medical attention, regardless of whether they appear injured or not. Do not include people who were not transported away from the scene for medical attention. Here are several examples of injuries reported on the S&S-20. The passenger is thrown out of the seat due to a vehicle maneuver. The train door closes on an arm, leg, backpack, or similar type of situation. If a person falls down an escalator in a transit facility. If a maintenance worker is burned by the third rail. This is a snapshot of the S&S-20 monthly summary report form. Two of the categories for injuries on the S&S-20 form relate to securement issues. Securement issues are those related to an injury resulting from improper securement of a mobility device, such as a wheelchair or scooter, so they are reported as other in-vehicle securement issue. The other category is for other in-vehicle not a securement issue. These are trips, slips, while on the vehicle or for being thrown from a seat during a vehicle maneuver. If no incidents occurred for a mode and month, open the appropriate S&S-20 form and choose the checkbox adjacent to No Data to Report. Then save and submit the report. Remember, do not include injuries due to collision or any other major event type. Again, reports are due at the end of the following month and must be completed and submitted by the due date to avoid an automatic late notice. The S&S-20 can be modified at any time. Some reporters like to enter events as they occur during the month. For these reporters, they can modify the form and save and close the form after each change. Your validation analyst reviews each report for accuracy. If we have any questions, we may return the report to you, call, or email you with our concern. If the return feature is used, the user ID under the last modified user column will receive the email. This is a snapshot of the S&S-20 monthly summary report with an analyst comment or question. So not only do you receive an email, but when you open the report, you will be able to see our question or concern there as well. That completes our review of the S&S-20, 30, and 50 forms. Do we have any questions?
While people are thinking of questions to ask and typing them in, I wanted to pop in and let you guys know that back on slide 30, which is why I stumbled on that, I noticed that there's one thing or two things that are incorrect on that slide. So if you have the printout, back on slide 30, it refers to check boxes to select the form you want and then click on the View Form button. I apologize that that's incorrect. We had a modernization of the forms, which I'm sure many of you noticed some time ago. And so now all you do, instead of those two extra steps, now you just click on the blue link, the form name, essentially, on the left-hand side. So I just wanted to clarify that for everyone. I apologize for the confusion there.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in, so I will now turn this over to Tim to review major event reporting.
Thanks, James. So as he said, we are going to discuss the major event reporting on the S&S-40 forms. So let's discuss the applicability and reporting thresholds in more detail. The definition of a reportable event is unchanged from 2016, 2017. They've remained the same. A reportable event is a safety or security event occurring on transit right-of-way or infrastructure, at a transit revenue facility, at a maintenance facility or rail yard, during a transit-related maintenance activity, or involving a transit revenue vehicle. The exclusions have also been clarified. The main change here is that the inclusion of events that occur off transit property where affected persons, vehicles, or objects come to rest on transit property after the event. The remainder are events that we have not collected in recent years, but information came more from guidance rather than the rule. So here we're going to look at a list of the thresholds. First, we have a fatality, including suicides. One or more persons transported for medical attention or a serious injury. Substantial property damage. Evacuations of a transit facility or vehicle for life safety reasons, or evacuations to the rail right-of-way, including both transit and officially directed customer self-evacuations. These are all automatically reportable regardless of any other threshold. Additionally, all of the following are automatically reportable regardless of meeting a threshold. All derailments, both mainline or in the yard. A collision involving a rail transit vehicle at a grade crossing. A collision between a rail transit vehicle and a person. A collision between a transit rail vehicle and another transit rail vehicle, which includes both revenue or non-revenue and maintenance vehicles. And any incident involving a runaway train. Here are a few types of events that are not reportable. The first two listed are examples of events that occur off transit property. Also medically related issues such as seizures, heart attacks, pregnancy, or a transit police vehicle and or a transit supervisor's vehicle is involved in a collision that meets a threshold is not reportable unless the vehicles are on transit property. So part of the event description or definition states involving a transit revenue vehicle. So if a deadheading or out-of-service vehicle is involved in a collision meeting a reporting threshold, it is reportable. Maintenance-related activities are included in reporting. Here you see a few examples of maintenance-related activities that are reportable. 2 rail workers injured in a manhole while providing maintenance on a rail infrastructure below street level. This is an example of the clarification of during a transit-related maintenance activity. While they were not technically on transit property, they were providing maintenance service to transit infrastructure. Then we have maintenance employee hit by a vehicle in the yard and is injured, or a track worker suffers a fatal fall onto the tracks. Less severe injuries to maintenance workers are captured on the S&S-20 monthly summary report, along with non-major injuries to passengers and patrons. NTD also collects non-transit collision incidents such as an accident in a transit parking lot that meets a threshold. A few examples are private vehicle collides with pedestrian or vehicle resulting in an injury. A private vehicle collides with transit property, such as a station, resulting in substantial damage, or another threshold. Or non-revenue maintenance equipment collides with anything or anyone other than a train, such as a high rail vehicle colliding with a person in the yard and the person is injured. If a non-revenue maintenance equipment collides with an agency's train, it is reported as a rail collision. Now we're going to clarify fatalities. A fatality is a death confirmed within 30 days of a transit-related event. This includes transit-related suicides. Please do not include deaths resulting from illness or natural causes, or persons found deceased on transit property where it is not a result of a collision or a suicide. On to injuries. There are 2 types of injuries. An injured person is a person transported immediately away from the scene for medical attention, which is considered a non-serious injury. This includes transport by ambulance or transport by private vehicle. An injury may also be deemed as a serious injury, which does not require transport from the scene. Please note the injury thresholds are different between rail and non-rail modes. For information on non-rail modes, please attend the training webinar, well, we just had it on Tuesday, or consult the policy manual or other guidance, such as your NTD S&S analyst. Further clarification on injuries, medical attention must be sought without delay after the event. Medical care that is sought hours or even days after an event does not meet a threshold and are not included. Medical attention must be administered at a location other than where the event occurred. This means that minor first aid given at the scene is not considered injured. And medical attention due to illness should not be reported. For example, a passenger on the train has a seizure and is transported to the hospital. This is not reportable. Serious injuries are defined by the following criteria. Requires hospitalization for more than 48 hours, commencing within 7 days from the date of the event. Results in a fracture of any bones, except simple fractures of fingers, toes, or nose. Causes severe hemorrhages, nerve muscle, or tendon damage. Involves an internal organ. Or involves second or third degree burns, or any burns affecting more than 5% of the body. And substantial damage is defined by the following criteria. Damage to any involved vehicles, facilities, equipment, rolling stock, or infrastructure that has disrupted the operations of the rail transit agency and adversely affects the structural strength, performance, or operating characteristics of the object or vehicle requiring towing, rescue, on-site maintenance, or immediate removal prior to safe operation. These are the exclusions to the substantial damage criteria, such as damage to cracked windows, dented, bent, or small punctured holes in the body, broken lights, mirrors, catenary, third rail equipment, or removal from service for minor repair or maintenance, testing or video and event recorder download, personal property such as laptop, cell phone, and the cost of accident or criminal investigation, medical claims, or litigation. These are all excluded from substantial damage. Rail transit vehicle collisions at a grade crossing are automatically reportable. The collision could be with an auto, object, animal, and so on. A grade crossing is where the rail tracks and the road intersect. For systems running in mixed traffic, such as mini light rail systems, each street intersection is considered a grade crossing. For example, if a train and a car collide at an intersection and there are no injuries or fatalities, no vehicle is towed, and no substantial damage, the collision is still reportable because it happened at a grade crossing. A collision between a rail transit vehicle and a person is also automatically reportable, regardless of injury or fatality. And another automatically reportable collision is between a transit rail vehicle and another transit rail vehicle. This includes both revenue or non-revenue vehicles and maintenance vehicles, such as high rail vehicles. These include events both on the main line or in the yard. Agencies are required to report all derailments, both mainline and those occurring in the yard, regardless of meeting any other threshold. This includes derailments of trains in revenue or non-revenue service and maintenance vehicles. Also, all events involving a runaway train are always reported. All evacuations for life safety or to the rail right-of-way are reportable, including or directed or customer self-evacuations. Self-evacuations are where customers vacate the property without direction of the transit agency or other authority. However, if passengers are evacuated or self-evacuate directly back onto the platform due to, say, power loss, this is not considered an evacuation. Evacuations may be due to mechanical or maintenance issues. For example, the train loses power and passengers are evacuated onto the right-of-way. However, if the passengers are moved from a train to a rescue train without stepping onto the right-of-way, this is not considered an evacuation. Some examples of life safety reasons might be suspicious packages, bomb threats, bombings, smoke event, fire, fuel, fumes, noxious odors, etc. So we're now going to move on to generating a new S&S-20 form. To create a major event report, you are going to log into NTD 2.0 and select the Records menu option. Then you will choose My NTD Safety Packages link and choose the year you want to report on. Then click on the NTD Safety Forms button located in the upper right corner to access the dashboard. To add a new report, just click on the File New S&S-20 button. If you have an event that includes 2 or more transit modes from your agency, you might be concerned with how to choose which mode to report under. If the event involved one of your rail modes and a non-rail mode, such as a streetcar and a bus, you're always going to choose rail. So once you've started the form, the first 2 screens will act as a wizard to help determine if the events meet a threshold. Screen 1 captures the date of the event, the mode and type of service, and the event type. Here we have a snapshot of setup screen 1. So you see you'll enter in the date from calendar, drop down, and then select your mode and type of service, and then the event type via radio button selection. So setup screen 1, the event types that are listed, the first and most common is a collision. This includes suicides or attempted suicides where there is vehicle impact. Then we have derailments as the next choice. This is both mainline and yard derailments. If a derailment results from a collision, you'll report the event as a collision. Next, we have fires. For an event to be considered a fire, there must be flame suppression. Non-fire smoke events or the smell of something burning, which meet another threshold, are reported as other safety events. For the event to be considered a hazardous material spill, this not only has to meet a threshold, but the situation would have to require specialized cleanup, such as a hazmat team. Then we have acts of God. This refers to acts of nature, such as hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, snowstorms, ice storms, lightning, etc. Basically all other natural events. Next, we'll have security events. There are 2 categories of security events. They are first the system security events, such as arson, bomb threats, burglary, suspicious package, vandalism, etc. Basically, these are all the events that affect the transit system. And then there's personal security events, such as assault, robbery, homicide, rape, larceny, etc. These are events that affect 1 or more persons. Just as with the other event types, the event must meet a threshold first. Suicides or attempted suicides that are not collisions are reported here as other personal security event. And finally, the last event type is other safety events. These are events that are those that don't fit into other categories, but they do meet a reporting threshold. This might be an evacuation due to smoke or a fall resulting in a fatality. You will notice that injuries of 2 or more people has an asterisk. For an other safety event, 2 or more injuries are required if that is the only threshold, such as a hard brake that results in 2 people falling instead of just 1. If there was only 1 injury from that, then this would be reported on the S&S-20. Otherwise, it needed to meet another threshold, such as a fatality or an evacuation. So on the second setup screen, it will ask you a series of questions, some of which are based on the mode and or the type of event you are reporting. This is to determine the reportability of the event and the subforms that need to be generated. This is only a list. We will cover each more in detail further in the presentation. First is the number of injuries and or fatalities. Then there is the substantial damage indicator, the evacuation threshold question, and the runaway train threshold question. If you are reporting a collision in rail mode, you will also be asked 4 other questions. They are, were transit vehicles involved in this event? Was the event at a collision at a grade crossing? Was the event a collision with another rail vehicle or person? And did the event involve a runaway train? This question also appears on the derailment and other safety event versions of Screen 2. Here you can see a snapshot of Screen 2 for all rail mode collisions. You'll see at the top it starts with person information about injuries and fatalities, then property damage, and then those 4 questions below. As I mentioned, if you choose collision on Screen 1, then Screen 2 captures if there were transit vehicles involved in the event. Select yes if this is true, which includes purchased transportation vehicles as a transit vehicle, since you are the ones reporting for this service. You would select no when the collision involves a private vehicle on transit property, such as a parking facility, but not when a transit vehicle is involved. Based on the selection you've made and the questions you have answered, the system will respond accordingly. If the event is reportable as a major event, the basic information screen will appear. If the event is not reportable as a major event, the system will generate a message that the event is not reportable and ask you if you want to continue. At this point, you can edit the selections on Setup Screen 2 in case you have answered a question incorrectly, which may or may have not have made the event seem not reportable. If the event meets the criteria of a major event, the basic information screen will appear next. The basic information screen displays the date you already selected. When entering the time, be sure to use AM or PM designations, even if you use military or 24-hour clock format. The approximate or actual location of the event, the geographic location, longitude, and latitude is required. You are permitted to enter numbers, a decimal point, and a negative symbol for the longitude, but please use a minimum of 4 decimal places. If you do not have the coordinates, you can use a variety of internet resources. One such site that we use is latlong.net. This is a screenshot of what latlong.net looks like. As you can see, there's a box to enter the physical address or station name or milepost, and the system will display the coordinates and the latitude and longitude boxes for you. Basic information screen also captures the event description. The description should be concise but descriptive so that the analyst can understand what occurred, how it occurred, and it should include the number and type of injuries or any fatalities. But please do not include personal data such as names and license numbers. The description box can hold 2,000 characters. If you exceed the 2,000 character limit, when you click on Next, a message will pop up that you exceeded the limit, and you will not be able to continue to the next screen until you reduce the number of characters. Here we've provided an example of a comprehensive narrative. The last piece of information on the basic information screen is the name and phone number of someone to contact for additional information regarding the event. You do not need to enter the name of the person if they are already the designated safety contact. The basic information screen is also the first screen that you will see the progress bar to appear. This bar shows you how many subsections you have to complete and your progress thus far in the reporting system. So here's a screenshot of that basic information screen, and you can see up at the very top there is a blue bar, or a bar that is blue up through basic information and continues to show the further steps you need to complete before the reporting process is complete. So moving on to the collision screens, we're first going to review these in detail. The collision screens will vary slightly depending on the mode. There are up to 4 screens or subforms that may appear when reporting a transit collision. They are the collision event information screen and the collision information screen, the transit vehicle involved information screen, and finally, if another vehicle is involved in the collision, then the other vehicle involved information screen will also appear. Here's a snapshot of the collision event screen for rail modes. See, it starts with the number of vehicles, the location, the collision width. We'll go over this in a moment. So the first collision screen is the collision event information screen. For all modes, this captures information about the number of transit vehicles involved. The answer will always be 1 unless 2 transit vehicles from your agency collide with each other. The location of the event, such as the transit facility, right-of-way, both at a grade crossing and not at a grade crossing, is also captured. Then what did the transit vehicle collide with, such as another vehicle, a person, an animal, fixed object, and so on. And finally, if applicable, the number of other non-transit vehicles that were involved in the collision. Here are a few things to keep in mind when reporting collision information. You will choose right-of-way, not a grade crossing, with locations such as driveways. Select other only when no other option is correct. Grade crossings are locations where rail tracks and vehicular traffic intersect. For streetcar mode, where the rail tracks are in the street, each intersection is considered a grade crossing. And if you report an event that occurred in a non-revenue facility, such as a yard, we still prefer that you indicate the event occurred at a grade crossing or not, rather than just select non-revenue facility. For the collision with selections, a collision with a bicyclist, pedicab, or person in a wheelchair is reported as a collision with a person. However, scooters, mopeds, and motorcycles, also school buses or dump trucks, are all reported as a collision with a non-transit motor vehicle. Please do not select other and type in school bus. Collision with a transit vehicle is used when 2 transit vehicles from your agency collide. In a multiple impact collision scenario, report the collision with as the first object impacted. For example, a train collides with a car and then the car hits a building. The collision with scenario selection would be non-transit motor vehicle, and you would include the damages to the building and that the building was struck in the event description. So let's look at a few examples of how to determine how many motor vehicles to report. So if car 1 cuts off a light rail vehicle, but no contact is made, and the light rail goes on to hit car 2, the number of other vehicles to report is 1 because only car 2 had impact. If car 1 hits car 2, then proceeds to hit the light rail vehicle, the number of other vehicles to report is 2 because both car 1 and 2 had made contact. Please note this box is not the total number of vehicles in the collision. It is only the total number of non-transit vehicles involved. So please do not include the transit vehicle in this number. The non-transit collision form would appear if you reported a collision that met a threshold, but when asked for transit vehicles involved in this collision, you selected no. This would be appropriate for reporting collisions on transit property when a transit vehicle was not involved, and this is what that screen looks like. As with other events, a non-transit collision must meet a reportable threshold. Here are a few examples. A private vehicle with a pedestrian, private vehicle or object or animal in a transit parking lot, or a privately owned vehicle collides with the transit center building. Non-revenue rail maintenance equipment, so not trains basically, collides with anything or anyone except a train. If it collides with a train, it is reported as a rail transit vehicle. After the collision event information screen, the collision information screen will appear. This is a snapshot of the first part of the collision information screen. The collision information screen captures information about the conditions at the scene. All modes capture the weather at the time of the collision. Was it raining? Was it clear? Was it snowing? Etc. Under the lighting selection, the twilight selection is used to refer to both dawn and dusk when it is not fully light or fully dark out. Please be sure that your lighting cooperates with the AM or PM time you entered in the basic information screen. If the collision occurred in a tunnel or indoor facility, please select artificial lighting. Please note this selection is not used to indicate street lights or lights at the platform. Artificial lighting is only used if you are inside. So under the rail alignment, let's go on and look at two of the options. The first is shared with other rail vehicles, controlled access to other non-rail vehicles. You would use this selection when the rail alignment is semi-exclusive right-of-way with controlled grade crossings for vehicular traffic. The second is non-exclusive right-of-way shared with vehicles or pedestrians. This would be selected when the rail alignment consists of rail tracks that are embedded in the streets and the cars can drive over them or pedestrians can walk over them in the same area that the transit vehicle travels. Neither of these options would be selected if the mode is heavy rail, since heavy rail alignment would always be exclusive, except for two specific agencies. For the grade crossing control device selection, please be sure that the selection is consistent with the location that you choose. Back on the fourth screen, the collision event information screen. Be sure to choose not applicable if the collision did not occur at a grade crossing. So at this point, we've completed the collision event information screen, and the next screen to be presented collects information about the rail transit train involved. One screen will appear for each train that was involved. Therefore, if two trains from the same agency collided, you would complete one transit vehicle information form for each train. The form includes an identifier count and buttons for increasing or decreasing the number of vehicles. And this is a snapshot of what that screen looks like. So this form captures the number of cars in a train and the number of cars that were derailed. It also collects the vehicle action at the time of the collision. Was it stopped, turning, etc.? And the collision type is also captured. This is the part of the train that was hit and is reported from the viewpoint of the train. This diagram here shows most of the impact points, which are reported from the point of view of the transit vehicle. So to go over those in more detail, we have other front impact, which is used when the front of the transit vehicle is impacted, but not when it would be considered a head-on or rear-ending. An example would be the front corner bumper hits another vehicle or object while turning, not the bumper on the side at the front. Likewise, other rear impact is used when the transit vehicle is impacted on the rear, but not when it would be considered a rear-ended. An example would be if the transit vehicle was backing up and hit a utility pole. For multiple vehicle accidents or a chain reaction accident, these can be a challenge to report. You'll want to remember to consider the first impact point in your analysis. In this diagram, we have vehicle 1 would be reported as rear-ending. It is doing the hitting, which means that vehicle 2 was rear-ended, which then caused vehicle 2 to be pushed into vehicle 3, the transit vehicle, which would also be reported as rear-ended. You also report the actual or estimated speed of the transit vehicle at the time of the collision. Then the transit vehicle manufacturer, which is chosen from a drop-down list of choices. And then you'll choose the vehicle fuel type, which is also chosen from a list of choices. The last question confirms if the collision involved a runaway train, and if so, then also indicates the location of the operator at the time. If you indicated on the collision event screen that another vehicle was involved, the other vehicle information screen will appear. This screen gathers information about non-transit vehicle or vehicles involved in the collision. If more than one other vehicle is involved, you will need to complete one other vehicle involved information form for each motor vehicle that was involved. So for example, a transit vehicle causes a multi-car collision with 2 autos. 2 other vehicle involved screens will be generated and must be completed to move on. This form also includes a vehicle count and buttons for increasing or decreasing the number of other vehicles. And here we have a screenshot of that other vehicle involved screen, similar to the transit vehicle involved screen. This form also collects the type of other vehicle. When reporting a collision, the other vehicle screen has a selection for commercial rail or Amtrak vehicle. The automobile option would be used for both cars and passenger vans, like a Dodge Caravan, for example. And it collects the action or physical movement of the other vehicle at the time of the collision. And finally, just as when reporting the transit vehicle collision type, you are going to indicate the part of the vehicle that was hit from the point of view of the other vehicle. This will conclude the collision information screen. We'll now look at the injury and fatality person information screens. If your event includes an injury or fatality, you will need to complete one screen for each person. This form also includes a person count and buttons for increasing or decreasing the number of people. Person type location categories are divided into 2 groups, persons outside the vehicle and persons inside the vehicle. So be sure to choose those carefully. We often see collisions reports where the transit vehicle operator is reported as being outside the vehicle during a collision. the transit vehicle rider will be the correct choice for passengers boarding or alighting, and for people and train surfing that are train surfing or riding between the cars. And then pedestrians walking along road is also included for people walking along the rail tracks. We then have pedestrian other. This is the best choice for people that are sitting, standing, or laying on the tracks. This form also includes an attempted suicide and a trespasser checkbox on the injury form, and a suicide and trespasser checkbox on the fatality form. Please be sure to select the location and the checkboxes accordingly. You may check both the suicide or attempted suicide and the trespasser boxes. Be sure to select the trespasser box if it is pedestrian other that you have chosen as the person type. Only the injury form includes the selections for the nature of the injury as serious or non-serious, and a checkbox to indicate if the person was transported. Remember that a seriously injured person may not have been transported from the scene, but a non-serious injury requires transport. Here's a screenshot of the fatality person information form. So you'll see the two groups inside and outside the vehicle, and then age, gender, and suicide and trespasser checkboxes down at the bottom. And similarly, here is the injury person information screen. Now you'll see at the top you have a drop-down for the injury type as serious or non-serious. And in addition to the attempted suicide and trespasser checkboxes, there's another one that says transported from the scene. If the suicide or attempted suicide involved collision with a transit vehicle, then this event's going to be reported as a collision with a person. However, if the suicide or attempted suicide did not involve contact with a transit vehicle, then it is reported under other personal security event type. When you're reporting these events on the injury or fatality form, you will need to check the suicide or attempted suicide box. If this is checked on the injury form, we will know you're reporting an attempted suicide. You may also check the trespasser box in addition to the suicide or attempted suicide box if it applies to both. Alrighty, so we have now concluded reporting on collisions, but before we continue to reporting other event types and editing the reports, we're going to go on and take a break for any questions you may have. You can go on and enter them in the text box now. I don't see any coming up, but Ann, I know you were working on the text box if you want to jump in with anything that might need clarification.
Yeah, I was, real quick. So first of all, a couple of people asked about the 2018 policy manuals and et cetera, and I said to go to the reference materials section on the NTD page. I just checked and I realized that those documents are not yet posted. So you still see 2017 guidance there. You won't be completely lost because as you saw in this presentation, there's only really two, because that form change has already happened. But there's a couple of minor clarifications with regard to the exclusion and the evacuation threshold. I apologize, that 2018 manual is not out there yet, but it will get posted to the website just as soon as the website's updated with that. Also, I see a question here from Gerald. Okay, so it says you're rural land and you have collisions with animals, horses, cattle, required by New Mexico law to reimburse the rancher or farmer. That's interesting. Would that be reportable? Well, the collision with the animal would be reported if it meets a threshold, but the cost of replacing the animal That's an interesting question. I've never had that. The guidance tells us that anything that's involved in the collision that has to be replaced, fences, posts, etc., light fixtures, so on, is included in the cost. If I'm going straight on that, I would say that yes, that would be included, but I may have to actually check on that. I've never had that question posed to me before. So, I mean, for the time being, I'm going to say yes. If that cost of that animal reaches, well, how would you define substantial damage? Okay, so in that case, considering substantial damage, it would have to, well, it would disrupt the operations of the train because I assume the train would be stopping once it's hit this animal. And if it changes the structural strength, integrity, requires maintenance, all of those things that define substantial damage, if it meets any of those thresholds, then it's reportable. So hopefully that answers your question. Sorry, I had to think that one out a little bit. Okay. Harold is typing something else, so let's just see if he has additional questions. It doesn't look like it. Oh. Okay. All right. Well, obviously you'd have to assess each one case-by-case basis. And Jeffrey had a question about the serious and non-serious injuries, and I find when one person has a question, usually there's others that do as well. So I know it seems a little bit, when talking about serious injuries and non-serious injuries, I know it seems a little bit counterintuitive to think that a seriously injured person doesn't need to be transported. But this is the guidance starting in 2017. So non-seriously injured people, you know, that don't meet the serious injury thresholds have to be transported away from the scene to be considered an injury. But as mentioned, serious injuries do not. So they have, you know, a broken leg, or they have tendon damage, nerve or muscle damage. You know, their spleen was damaged, and they didn't know it at the time. They got up, they walked away. Later on, they went to the hospital and had to stay at the hospital for a couple of days, and, you know, so on. So now that is the definition of a serious injury. So just trying to clear that up a little bit. You'll have a box, as Tim mentioned, on your injury form to indicate whether or not they were transported. So bottom line there is, if you're choosing non-serious, the transported for medical attention has to be checked. If you've chosen serious, it does not. Jeffrey's typing. Welcome, Jeff. Let me go up and look, Bram. I thought you were asking the same as, okay, beg pardon. Okay, so when you go to the FTA, I don't know where you go in, obviously, but when you go into FTA website, you know, type in Federal Transit Administration, you go to the website, the blue box, it says About. And if you go into that second column and choose NTD reporting, I believe it says, I guess it just says National Transit Database. You click on that National Transit Database. That's the National Transit Database page on the FTA website. On the left-hand side, we actually showed a picture of this back on, I don't know, somewhere around 28 or something like that. On the left-hand side, it says Reference Materials. And when you click on that link, it'll have a list of different types: manuals, asset inventory modules, trainings and conferences, reporting forms, etc. And if you go to manuals, then you'll see listed there, there's sampling manuals, there's annual reporting policy manuals, there's safety reporting policy manuals, there's a glossary, there's system reporting guides, etc. John and Cindy, the threshold for any event is the same as we've listed as thresholds. So if it meets fatality, obviously vandalism is not fatality. Vandalism and burglary, obviously it's going to meet the substantial damage threshold. That's probably the only one, assuming there's no injuries or anything like that. Maybe an evacuation, but probably just your property damage, substantial damage threshold would be the triggering factor there. Okay, so please keep asking your questions. I think in the interest of time, we'll keep going on with the presentation.
All right, thanks, Ann, for answering some of those. I'm going to go on and turn this over to James, who's going to start you off with talking about evacuations.
All right, thanks, Tim. All right, so the evacuation threshold. Evacuations for life safety means there is imminent danger to all people in that environment. Reportable evacuations are also to the rail right-of-way. Each evacuation type includes both customer self-evacuations or transit or official direction. Evacuations can be part of almost any event type, but are least common in collisions. An evacuation requires all passengers and/or employees to depart a transit vehicle or facility. These may be for a safety or security event. This includes events that occur off-property but affect the transit system. For example, a gas leak or fire on adjacent property that caused the RTA to evacuate a nearby station. Evacuations are not a person removed from vehicle for a medical treatment. A person hit by a car on a city street and lands on the rail right-of-way. Removing passengers off a vehicle due to a collision. Transferring passengers from one train to another where the passengers are not placed on the rail right-of-way. This is a screenshot of the rail mode evacuation subform. The first question on the evacuation event screen is to confirm that the evacuation was for life safety to the rail right-of-way or a self-evacuation. You may select as many options as needed. Include a brief description of the evacuation, including the cause. The what was evacuated question is used to indicate what was actually evacuated. One choice would be vehicle or vessel, which would mean the train. Do not report the location of the train at the time. Once the evacuation subform is generated in a report, it cannot be deleted. So if an evacuation is incorrectly included, the entire report would need to be deleted and a new report entered without the evacuation. Similarly, you cannot add an evacuation subform to a report. Reporting derailments. Of course, this is for rail modes only, not including Commuter Rail or Alaska Railway, since they report only security events. All derailments of transit trains on mainline track or in the yard are reported even if the train is not in revenue service and regardless of any other major threshold. On the derailment form, you will be asked to indicate if this is a mainline or yard derailment. Maintenance equipment such as high rail vehicle derailments are also automatically reportable. Please be sure to select one rail transit vehicle involved and not the other vehicle form. Reminder, derailments resulting from a collision are reported as collisions, not a derailment. This is a screenshot of the derailment form. As you can see, the form collects the type of derailment, where the derailment occurred, the number of trains involved, the location of the derailment, and the right-of-way configuration. This is a screenshot of the derailment rail transit details form, which is much like the collision information screen, collecting lighting, alignment, and conditions. This is a screenshot of the derailment rail transit train involved form. The form also collects information about the train involved, including if the derailment was due to a runaway train. Reporting fires on the S&S-20 that meet one or more major event thresholds. To be defined as a fire, the incident must have had fire suppression equipment or personnel involved to contain the fire and must meet a major event threshold. Without these thresholds, a fire requiring suppression is reported on the S&S-50 non-major summary report. Arson is reported on Screen 1 as a system security event, not a fire. The presence of smoke only is reported as an other safety event. This is a screenshot of the fire event details screen. If the fire is in or on the rail vehicle, including the engine, wheel area, or anywhere on the outside, this would be reported as in or on vehicle. Report the type or cause of the fire. For the fuel type selection, if you chose the location of the fire as in or on vehicle, then you would report the fuel type of the vehicle. Acts of God are natural and unavoidable catastrophes that affect the transit environment. Select all locations of property damage, injuries, fatalities, and evacuations. You will be able to choose more than one option. For example, the location should indicate the property or properties that were damaged and not the geographic location, such as the name of the city. This is a screenshot of the Act of God screen. When reporting hazardous material spills, the spill must meet a reportable threshold and have caused imminent danger to life, health, or environment and required specialized cleanup. A couple of examples of what is not reportable as a hazmat event. Oil, brake fluid, etc. from a transit vehicle. It's not enough fluid to meet a threshold. A bleach container carried onto a vehicle breaks open and the vehicle is evacuated due to fumes. This is reported as other safety event because no specialized cleanup would be used. This is a screenshot of the hazardous material spill screen. Notice you report the location of the spill and the type of material spilled. There are two categories of security events on Screen 1. System security or personal security events, which must meet one or more of the following thresholds. System security events occur on transit property and affects the transit system as a whole. Personal security events happen to individuals on transit property or those boarding and alighting a transit vehicle. This is a screenshot of the System Security Event screen. You may notice that there's an Other System Security Event option on this form. This would be to capture security events that do not meet any other category. For example, shots fired or objects thrown at a vehicle. This is a screenshot of the Personal Security Event screen. You will notice that there is an Other Personal Security Event option on this form as well. The other personal security event would be used to report a suicide or attempted suicide that did not involve contact with a transit vehicle, but instead is due to self-inflicted harm. If contact is made with a transit vehicle, it is reported as a collision. When you are reporting these events on the injury or fatality form, you will check the suicide box. If this is checked on the injury form, we will know you are reporting an attempted suicide. You should also select trespasser if the person was on the tracks or other unauthorized area. The final major event type is other safety events. This is your miscellaneous category. These events must meet one of the following thresholds: 1 or more fatalities, 2 or more injured, either serious or non-serious, substantial damage, an evacuation, or involved a runaway train. Please note, you may report an other safety event with 1 injury if another threshold is met. Here are some examples. An evacuation of transit property due to smoke, fumes, or noxious odors. Any fatality on transit property that is not considered a collision or suicide. It's a fall, electrocution, etc. 2 people thrown from their seats due to a hard brake. 3 people injured when an escalator comes to an abrupt stop. Other safety events resulting in only a single injury are reported on the S&S-20 monthly summary form. This is a screenshot of the other safety event screen. So at this point, we have completed all our screens for the reportable event types. Let's review saving, submitting, and editing. At any point from the basic information screen on, the system automatically saves your report. So if you close the report without saving or submitting from this point on, these auto-saved reports become pending reports, which are stored as a task on the task menu option. When you are ready to complete the report, click on the task menu option and you will see a listing of each task. Major event report tasks will appear with S&S-20 in the title. Just click on the task and the system will return you to the screen where you were on when you closed the report. Complete the report and save and submit. Or, if you no longer need the report, you can choose delete instead. The system will send you an email that you have a task and will email monthly to manage the task, or it will be discarded. Save and submit options appear when you are in View Form mode. If you do not see a Save or Submit button, click on the View Form button and scroll to the bottom. Once you click on Save, the report is saved. It is given an event number at the top of the report. The report stays open so you may review it. When you submit a report, the report will close and return you to the dashboard. Submitting the report releases the report to the validation analyst for review and comment. It also notifies the analyst that a report has been created, otherwise we may never know one has been created. If we see an unsubmitted report and it is past the due date, we will contact you to submit the report. Please note that unsubmitted reports are excluded from the event, injury, and fatality counts in the S&S-20 CEO Certification form. Analysts may return a report to you for questions or to make corrections. The system will send the last modified user one email for each report that is returned. After you make corrections, be sure to save and submit. When reviewing or editing your reports, it's important to learn how to move around the document. Here's the list of the available button tools, though each button may not be available on every form. One shortcut I would like to point out is the Jump To button. This button allows you to jump to a specific screen instead of using the next or back buttons. This will also be how you edit a report. The View Form button shows the entire report for review and contains the Jump To buttons and Save and Submit buttons. When you open the report, the first screen is the Setup Summary view. This screen is the only place you can edit the date of the event. Also, if your report does not include any injuries or fatalities, this screen is the only place where you can add them. Then you would click on Next, which displays your report in View Form mode. At this point, you can continue to use Next to go to each screen, or you can click on one of the Jump To sections. This also enables the editing mode. As a reminder, Save and Submit only appear in View Form mode. A moment ago, I mentioned how to add injuries or fatalities if there are not any in the report. However, if there are injuries or fatalities in the report, and you need to increase or decrease the number, you can jump to the Injury or Fatality section and use the Add or Delete Persons buttons. If you choose Delete Person, it will delete the person you are currently viewing. Similarly, you can increase or decrease the number of transit or non-transit vehicles in a report by, again, jumping to the appropriate section and click on Add Vehicle or Delete Vehicle. Be sure to click on Save and Submit after making your changes. If you delete a report that was not requested by your analyst, please notify your safety and security analyst. Not only do we need to know why the report was deleted, it saves the analyst from trying to locate which report was deleted when our tracking sheets show a different number than the NTD screen. That concludes the presentation, and we will open it back up for questions. If you do not get a chance to ask your question or prefer to ask it in a one-on-one session, please feel free to contact any of us after.
Does any, I see that the last slide up here with the contact information is not present. Does anybody need to see the contact information again? I'll try and see what slide that was.
And I'm sorry, I see the slide with the contact information. Was there?
Okay, I don't. So that's okay. Maybe maybe everybody else can see it. I don't. So.
It's the one that says type the question in the chat, and then it has your names with your numbers and your email address.
I'm sorry?
It has your names and numbers and email address. I'm seeing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And even if I'm not sure how I'd be the only one seeing it, but it's in the handout as well, that information.
Okay.
Stephen, there's a download link in the upper left-hand corner under Handouts.
Right, or you could paste the URL in the notes section. It's the same document, two different ways.
Hey, and there's a question from Gerald regarding a wildfire that they had about 2 years ago. I wasn't sure if you're able to read that. Do you have any insight or thought on that one?
I think my screen is frozen. I can't see anything. So what is the question?
So Gerald states, I had an incident 2 years ago where a wildfire started 5 miles away from railroad tracks. It was moving in the direction of our rail line, and in between the fire and the rail line, there was a natural gas line. New Mexico State Marshal contacted us and said we could not operate in this area until further notice from his office. We did a bus bridge to evacuate the train and take to the nearest station outside the fire zone. It was determined not to be a reportable incident since the fire did not reach the rail right of way. Does this still hold true?
Okay. Well, I mean, you did have a train evacuation. That's my thought there. So, and just as we collect, someone else asked earlier about events that occur off property, so there's a gas leak or a bomb threat in a nearby building and they evacuate your station, I would have to apply, you know, the guidance the same way here. So it seems to me that this would be, now is, well, is that a commuter rail? Can you ask him? If that's commuter rail, I can't remember if he was commuter rail or not. Someone was earlier that I was answering a question to. At any rate, so I would have to think that if they, you did a bus bridge, so obviously I guess a bus is coming out to this location, and you're taking people off of the train and putting them onto the bus for a life safety reason, this fire, smoke, gas line, potential threat. It seems to me it would be reportable as an evacuation. Unless that's commuter rail.
They are commuter rail. Yep,
okay, so commuter rail, no. Commuter rail reports only security events. So that would have had to have been a bomb threat or something like that to be reportable.
Okay, thank you.
You guys will have to feed other questions to me or answer them myself. For some reason, my webinar screen is frozen up. So.
Very odd.
I'm not quite sure what happened, but I guess that's why I can't see that last contact page.
Weird. I mean, I would tell you to restart, but probably at this point.
Right. Yeah, not at this point. So.
I'm seeing a few more people typing.
Okay.
We can never tell if they're typing to each other in private chats or if it's a question for everyone. So we'll just wait another minute.
Certainly.
Last call for questions, everybody. Another couple of seconds.
Or, of course, you can call any of us or email any of us after the session, of course.
Of course, right. And unless everyone is having trouble, the contact information should be up on your screen right now. Oh, Joshua, okay, Bram Weiser wants a copy of the transcript, which I will have emailed to me from the captioning company tomorrow, so I could send that out if you want to shoot me an email to remind me, or if anyone wants it. My email is lglickman@nti.rutgers.edu. If you received emails about the webinar, it's probably on there. Just ask, and as soon as I have the transcript, I can send that out to you. The other question, Joshua Katz said, would an evacuation due to a suspicious package be reportable?
Yes. A suspicious package is considered a perceived threat, even if it turns out to be somebody's lunch or gym clothes, as has happened in the past. So again, the point is that someone, you know, the station or train as it were, was evacuated due to a potential threat. And, you know, look at it this way. If you hadn't evacuated and it was a bomb, there you go. It is a reportable evacuation.
Great. Thank you. It doesn't look like anyone else is typing. So again, if you have questions after the session, you can email Ann, Tim, or James. Other than that, I guess we're done. And I would like to thank everyone for participating this afternoon. A special thank you to Ann, Tim, and James for your great informative presentation. A reminder, everyone on here should be getting an invitation to fill out a survey for this webinar. NTI greatly appreciates your feedback. So just take a few minutes when you get it and fill that out. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Thank you.